What's up, y'all? Welcome to another Furry Valley Podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that you can leave any questions you have for us tonight in the podcast text channel located right above this voice chat. Any discussion you have can take place in the speaking voice channel right above this as well. We'll try to address as many of these questions as we can at the end of the show. And please keep your microphones muted for the duration of the podcast out of respect for our guests and the rest of the audience. As always, it's your boy Nova the Bass Skunk, and I'm here with co-host and certified Nova alt Simba. Simba, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm tired, but I'm alright. What else is new?
Same here.
So our guests tonight are two of our level 4 admins, both some of FV's hardest workers. I'd like to welcome Gyzmo and Paco to the show. Gyzmo, Paco, thanks for being here. How are y'all doing tonight?
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on tonight. I'm well.
I'm doing good. Just catching up on stuff and trying to get ahead on a few things.
I'm glad to hear it. I appreciate y'all coming out. So tonight's podcast is Finding Your Paws, a guide to growing up. But what exactly makes an adult? Jewish folk, among other religions, would say around 13. Most of the West says 18, and now there are studies coming out saying that adolescence doesn't stop until 25. Gyzmo, what would you say is an adult?
Growing up, I've always heard an adult being 18 years old, but through the process of living my life, I found out that closer to 25 is when I hit the maturity level to figure out how to get my life together.
I can definitely agree with that. What do you think, Paco?
I think perhaps adult is a bit of an arbitrary term. So, I'm only 21 for those of you who don't know, and I think in certain ways I have maturity, and other ways I don't. I think some people can go through their entire life without growing up. And so the age limit is somewhat arbitrary in the sense that different people grow up at different times, so it's very hard to put a stamp on it. That said, obviously I think it's very important that we have that kind of lower bound of 18 for legal stuff, so that everyone is kind of protected as children. I think that the child boundary is perhaps somewhat more important than the adult categorization.
It's interesting going off. You mentioned 18 for legal stuff, and Nova mentions studies now are saying the brain is still developing until 25. It's actually up to 30, some scientists now think. So ethically, the idea that you can try someone for murder when they're 18 is very shaky at this point. You have to have some sort of limit, I suppose, but scientists pretty much in consensus now it should not be 18. Very much a childlike brain at that point.
So some of our more, I wouldn't necessarily say mature members, but y'all are legal adults that seem to have you together as a rule. Paco, what does your life look like outside of FV?
So up until very recently, I was a student at university doing a history degree, and just recently, this year I graduated, and now I've just moved into the job market, going through the process of getting a job. I've got a few interviews coming up and this kind of thing, so in still a transitional stage, moving away from university, moving into, actually becoming an adult in the sense of, actually nailing down a 9 till 5 job.
Well, best of luck with that. Do you have any, do any of those interviews look like sure prospect?
They're all competitive, I'd say. It's hard to say what's a sure prospect. They range across a number of areas, but I'm hopeful that I'll get offers off at least a few. And those should tide me over, looking to sort of do those for a year or two whilst I pursue both my own business and potentially training contracts in certain industries.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. While Paco is entering the job market, you're definitely further into your adult life. What is it that you do outside of FV?
Outside of FE for the last 13 years, I've been a professional truck driver. So I've traveled all over the United States, seeing different places. Heck, I own my own place, have my own car, very established. The only thing that I have issue with still is just student loans back from when I was in the college days.
And real quick for the folk in the audience, since you are very busy with us as well, what is it you do for Furry Valley?
I am the lead admin for FurCon and Amino. Currently working with FurCon to create a convention for us, which looks like it's either going to be up north near Ohio somewhere or down south in the Georgia, Florida, South Carolina area. We're just waiting on the poll to finish up and see which section wins.
Sorry, go on, Paco.
No, please finish up your little comment.
All I was going to say was that's super exciting, and everyone should be staying tuned for the next several months while that convention comes together. I'm sure Gizmo's doing an awesome job with it. So, not to leave you out, Paco, what is it?
Oh, well, thank you very much. So I lead the speaking, recruitment, and MC teams. The MC team is a co-lead thing, where I manage staff and make sure that all the admins are trained and doing the community side jobs, leaving Boozle and Sodo to actually focus on improving the servers. So mostly managing those three teams, and I've sort of grown from doing a few into taking on more and more roles, moving into managerial positions. Honestly, it's been real fun. If we're talking about growing up, I wouldn't understate the extent to which this place has been a part of that. Across these three teams, I'm managing something like 50 people, coordinating events in multiple time zones, making sure that things run on time, well, most of the time, and generally, trying to organise stuff. And that kind of, one of Thatcher's advisors used to state, and that's one of our old prime ministers, for those of you who are in different parts of the world, that if you want people to act responsibly, you must give them responsibility. And I certainly feel like the responsibility I've been given here has been sort of key to that whole process of growing up.
We can see how that worked with labs. Oops.
Keep your comments to yourself, mister.
I think that was a reasonable comment.
Same, just about.
We managed to turn you into half a success, didn't we?
But I think there's a question on, is being an adult a myth? And the person you've mentioned, well, when we're talking about lost causes, let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was 150 in dog years.
That's pretty old.
You can't teach an
I remember when I was
like
that old.
I'm not going to question that.
Wise.
Alrighty. So again, that was a little bit of an inadvertent plug, but the Furry Valley is absolutely fabulous for teaching responsibility and actual professional skills. So next time the applications open up, if any of y'all are interested, you should definitely be checking that out. It's done me a great deal of help. I speak more confidently now hosting the podcast. Definitely something to keep in mind if you're someone who's ready for that sort of transition, but not quite ready to jump headfirst into, adult life. So moving on, for a lot of folk, growing up and becoming a functioning, responsible adult seems terrifying, if not impossible. Gizmo, how is it you got to this point in your life?
It took a lot of self-reflection for me. Because from the age of 18 to 25, I wasn't sure where I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. I just got in a truck, basically drove around, had fun, and just wasted funds. And then once I hit 25, it's like, okay, I started missing home more and started to plan my routes where I wanted to stay. Got a local job where I'm home almost every weekend and just work during the week and just build up from there, getting my stuff in order.
So you'd say it was a consistent process. You didn't just become an adult. It was years of repetition and scheduling. And
yeah, the trucking industry taught me how to stay on a schedule and how to be responsible. And then just from there, I applied that to everyday life to get to the point where I'm at.
Absolutely wonderful. Paco, how about yourself? How is it that you now are confident and ready to enter the job market? How did you get here?
So I think I've been very lucky in some respects. I come from a very calm, loving family, and over my time I've had a series of sort of mentors, people in my life who, whether they've been teachers or friends or bosses, who've been constructive and have given me opportunities and sort of taught me how to improve myself. Quite often, I've looked at people who I've aspired to be like and thought, well, these are the things I like about you. I want to be like this, except in my own way. in a year or so's time. And having those role models has really kind of helped me pull myself up and improve myself. I think I'm still working on things like scheduling and consistency and actually trying to, organize myself as well as I try to organize other people. But I certainly think it's mostly to do with positive external influences as well as having a pretty stable life.
Absolutely. That is we talked about that last week as well, that if you're looking to grow as a person, become more comfortable, become more confident, become more successful, then you need to surround yourself with people and influences that are going to do you well. Because if you're surrounding yourself with defeatists and lazy folk, then you're probably not going to accomplish all that much yourself.
Yeah, it's entirely the frame in who you compare yourself to, right? There are people doing marvelous things at this age. People go off and start businesses or go on to do terrific things in certain sectors, whatever. And aspiring to be like, people who are really doing something rather than to maybe your immediate circle of people who aren't really that concerned about doing that much. I mean, I think that gives you kind of aspiration.
I think it can be quite difficult for some young people, though, either because they don't want to sort of distance themselves from what their less ambitious friends may be doing, or maybe they just don't have anyone around them who they can sort of aspire to be like. Quite sad,
Yeah.
but I think there are many young people who, especially from less privileged areas, would suffer from that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like a lot of things in your life, it's sort of who you know is worth quite a lot. Unfairly so. But it's also about making the most of what you do have and who you do know. I think there's two separate things there.
And thankfully, with the rise of social media and the internet, if it's going to be good for anything, it does help us connect with like-minded or better influence. I mean, I'm not going to.
So it can help you find more people who are just like you. I'm not sure there are many. I'm not sure it's the typical thing to do to find people to learn from online. I think people look for those who are similar to themselves generally.
It just means making an active effort to find those people. Then, obviously, the internet is it's conducive to and has given rise to echo chamberism, and it's something that fascinates me. But we've discussed it before. Just because social media does bad does not mean it's inherently.
Except
but
Twitter.
That's a topic for another time. Except Twitter. You've got nothing of value there. If you got a Twitter, go ahead, just deactivate. So back to topic. I've heard a lot from younger folk in FV, and I mean a lot. There's a lot of folk who are upset, struggling, whatever, and they're depressed teenagers, and they say that they feel they're missing out on their best years. But personally, when I think back to mine, and I know that a lot of people feel this way, your teenage years are just, they suck. Paco, what is it you like about being an adult?
So firstly, I'd really like to respond to the teenage thing. I'm not necessarily sure if any time in your life is going to be the sort of golden years. They are what you make of them. Your best years are likely to be simply the years in which you put the effort in and actually reap rewards. It might be the case that as a teenager you lack the power or control to actually make use of what you've got. And as a result, it's going to feel like a real struggle, and that's understandable. But therefore it's not that the golden years are being wasted. It's simply that you will hopefully have opportunities in the future to turn the successive years into something better. As for what I enjoy about being an adult, I'm not sure that there's really anything particularly different for me. I enjoy actually having the legal rights to do things. It's nice actually being able to do exactly what I want. I like being able to vote. I like being able to participate in that kind of thing. I like being able to drink, etc., etc. Although I don't feel like at 18, a switch was flipped and all of a sudden being an adult meant things to me. So yeah.
Would you say it means anything in particular to you now?
Not necessarily. I think that it comes. I like the fact that you have this label attached, and that therefore you get certain things within the law, and on top of that, you're able to exercise yourself in a certain way. But do I feel like at some point there was a distinction made? No, no. I feel like growing up is far more step by step than that. There's no kind of real shift.
I think you sort of only notice it if you look back a year. I think if you look day to day, well, nothing changed, right? But then you compound that a day and day and day, and now then give it a year, and you're a completely different person. Like if you think back to when you were 20, when you were in 19, 18, even between when you started uni and finished uni, you're probably totally different.
Yeah. I think I'm a lot more restrained.
Yeah.
With
alcohol.
Yeah.
All right. I want to give Gyzmo a chance to interject, and we've got a lot of different points, so I'll try to break them down. First, Gyzmo, do you think there was a point where you said, "Oh wow, I'm an adult"?
At some point, I don't think I've ever said that I'm an adult. I still consider myself a big kid because I still like to play games. I still like to go have fun. And if I claim I'm an adult, I tend to look at that as a bad thing. I just look at it as I am established. I am where I should be at this point.
Okay, that's totally fair. Regardless of if you like that label or not, though, you are an adult. So what is it that you like about being an adult compared to your teenage or childhood?
Not having to check in with the parents. I'm able to go do what I want, when I want, how I want to live, and establish myself.
And I think for a lot of younger folk, they really underestimate just how much power and self-determination that gives you when you get to run on your own schedule. Yes, it does suck to have to be, in charge of yourself, to have to be the one who decides if you have a house the next month. But even so, I would say that self-determination, being able to say, "Oh, I'm an adult. I can go spend $45 on candy if I'm so inclined." It makes a big difference.
I agree. To come back to that quote I used earlier, if you want to make people responsible, give them responsibility. And this is exactly the case, that as you grow up and you have to look out for bills and maintain your job and, keep up relationships within your own time rather than actually, being a sort of at the mercy, but also, being shepherded around by your parents, well then, naturally, that trends towards becoming a more responsible individual because you have more responsibilities to manage.
And that's the American university system gets a lot of shit if you're not going to a top tier school, but I will say it does a good job of giving that sort of intermediary time for young adults to have sort of a semblance of their own responsibility while still keeping them in a controlled environment. Sort of like a children's playground for adulthood where you can only get so hurt.
Right, I agree with that to an extent, but obviously the issue with the American system is that everyone goes to it, and by shackling it with that label as it's a place you go to grow up, we totally forget that there are alternative means to reach that, such as getting a job or an apprenticeship, or even studying in a place where you aren't going to be charged exorbitant fees, where you can grow up and get that responsibility in much the same way, without shackling yourself to, as Gyzmo said right at the start of this, the one remainder of their childhood, which is a stupid amount of debt. That's my perspective on American universities.
Yeah, and I can agree. So, but go ahead, Simba. I'm sorry.
So the thing I find most ridiculous about US universities, and we don't have this in the UK, but you guys have to buy your own books for college. Like, I've had friends, they spend thousands of dollars on textbooks. Like, the course books aren't provided by the university. You don't get, given the material. That to me is absurd. I couldn't imagine that.
My history courses, the books were usually, they wouldn't go further than $20, but for my business degree, oh my goodness, some of them were $450 plus.
Yeah, for a book. Crazy.
But the idea that there isn't a library on site which
Yeah,
has a
yeah,
deep
yeah.
and extensive stock is incredibly odd.
Well, it's entirely because groups like Pearson decided that they have to have online supplements, so you're not spending $400 on pieces of paper, you're spending it on a singular piece of paper with an activation code.
This is very weird. Like in the UK, we don't have anything like this. I mean, of course, we have online resources for courses, but
But I'm
Paid
sure
for by
it
the
doesn't
university.
not like that. Yeah, exactly. It's yeah. Very weird.
Alright, anyway, back to topic. So with tonight's topic being finding your paws, a lot of furries out there, especially those now looking at college or starting their careers, are scared that they don't know exactly what they're getting into. Gizmo, what have been some of the obstacles you've faced in adulthood that you didn't expect?
The biggest obstacle would have been right when I got out of college. The field that I actually have my degree in, I didn't go into, and I haven't been able to find because it's basically I got a bachelor's in business administration. Locally where I live, those type of degrees, it's either door-to-door sales or some sort of face-to-face push people into buying more stuff type of sales positions, which I don't really find myself comfortable in. So I had to go into a completely different field and become a truck driver. And that was probably the biggest complication.
And I think that's anyone who's graduated college can tell you that the job market doesn't look anything quite like you expect it to when you're first studying whatever it is that you decide you want to study.
Well, yeah, that's sorry, go on, Simba, after you.
The point of a degree to an employer is to prove that you can think. So I have my undergrad in maths, and I don't get employed because I can do weird maths with Greek letters all over the place. I get employed because it shows I'm analytical and logical and so forth. So most of what you learn in your degree, I'd say regardless of what your degree is in, unless you're going to be a teacher, is generally useless.
Yeah, I think that's been my experience as someone who is in this exact situation we're talking about. My degree's in history, but I use it to say, well, I have research skills, the ability to analyze things and to present things in a concise, clear, argumentative format, this sort of thing. Yeah.
I guess this is sort of like when you go to your second job, they don't really care what your degree is because your first job proves, can you do these skills? It's all about skills, it's not about knowledge.
Absolutely. So, Paco, what is it that you have? Well, you're still just only joining the job force. You've only had so much experience as a solid hates the term so much in adulting adult. What have been some of the obstacles you've faced so far that you didn't expect?
So, firstly, it's that unless you walk out of university with a clear job offer, it's the sheer scale of what you have in front of you. The idea that, well, you can go into anything, but also, well, that open field results in what exactly am I going to do? For people, I think, and this is more and more regular now, coming out of university without a clear idea of what they want to go into, they are simply overwhelmed by the diversity of opportunities and fields, and as such, how to properly research and go about getting into them. What I'd say has made things simpler has been making use of the resources provided by the university, and I think whatever university you go to, they're going to have a career service, and that's because it looks good for them to say, a large amount of our students were employed or in further education after studying here, so they want to make it easier for you to get a job. So that they'll have resources and, research and preparation and proper guidance. They're the tools to actually help you see where you want to go, instead of committing to a career where, in fact, 5 years down the line, you're going to find out, well, the salary's capped, I'm not happy, this isn't the work that I thought it'd be. And you can ease this transition into adult life through doing work experience and actually getting a sense of jobs before you go into them. If you have a summer, I strongly recommend taking a preferably paid work experience at the areas that you're interested in. That means that when you come to graduating, you can actually either go back to them with a clear idea of, I've worked for you before, I've done all this stuff for you, or indeed say, that wasn't for me, I'm going to look at something else.
And there's a lot of value in knowing what you don't want to do. A lot of people think, what do I want to do? Rule things out. Because as Paco says, it's a massive arena, and if you can cut off some areas immediately, that'll make your search a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I guess a moral of that story is, and it's absolutely great advice, especially those getting ready to start college, take advantage of any of the resources you can. There's going to be plenty that you don't think of that, or you might see it and you think it's ridiculous, mental health services, career fairs, stuff like that. Try it out, give it a shot, and you might learn a lot more than you think you will. And the more you can knock out while you're still in those training wheel stages of being an adult will do you so much good once it's time to actually join the job market.
So I think an important thing to do is not to have paralysis of fear, where because you're not really sure 100% what you want to do for the rest of your life, you end up stalling and not really doing anything. Just do something. If you can't rule it out, give it a go, because there is no harm at all in however many months or a couple of years down the line saying, okay, well, I've tried this, I don't like it, I'm going to try something else. I've tried all sorts of different careers. Do what you feel like, and the only way in some cases that you're going to figure out you don't want to do something is by giving it a go. You're not going to analyze your way into figuring out you don't like certain jobs, and some of them sound very different on paper to what the experience is. My first job was as a software engineer, and it looked very glossy, and what was advertised on the website and the interview was all very good, but after 3 years there, it was nothing like what was advertised, and so I was like, screw this. But I wouldn't have known that had I not gone and done the job.
I mean, just like Shakira says, you have to try everything. Zootopia plug. Not that y'all needed a Zootopia plug, you're a bunch of degenerates.
Wow.
Rule me out of your shit, Nova.
Now, I feel like I could expose you right now, Paco, but I feel like...
Do it. Come on, Nova. Level 5.
Level 5 requirements. Shaming
get
Paco. Jesus.
Yep. It's on the checklist.
Lovely. Just what I've always wanted.
Oh, goodness. So, speaking of Gazelle, last week we discussed how to find your confidence, try everything. For anyone interested, if you look in speaking announcements, we do have a link to that podcast if you want to check that out afterward. But for adulthood, it's difficult to ease your way in, and most folk, you're really your only choice is to jump into the deep end and get started. Not everyone gets to have that slow transition period. Paco, what would you say your advice is for those who are getting ready to take that plunge?
Sorry, what exactly by plunge? Is in those who didn't get to go to university, or...?
For those who now find themselves at, the age of 18 or getting ready to be there, that they have to jump into a job and start preparing for the real world.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this will be a consistent theme of tonight, I think. It's actually that quite simple principles, well executed, i.e. simple advice works best. We could give you quite complex things about how to analyze thoughts and properly, think things through. But in fact, just going out there and trying things, and actually doing your research online will herald incredible results. Rather than thinking yourself into a corner by trying to think, oh, will I like this, will I not? Go and take advantage of the tremendous sort of money and time that goes into simplifying the job market through online resources and employers doing outreach. There are things out there. So, if you are about to take this step into the adult world, don't think it's entirely cold and uncaring, because it is in some ways cold and uncaring. But people want to hire good people, so they care about their profits, and as such, they will try and make it so that good people can get in. So they will do outreach. Your research will herald results. Take a look around, see what you find, and then start trying things. As we said, yeah.
Yeah, it is a very consistent theme. Take advantage of the resources available to you. Try to knock out as many of those uninterests as you can, and try to pursue your passions when they're a lot easier and a lot less financially straining to give them a shot. What about you, Gizmo? Is there any advice that you would give to folk who just have to jump right?
Jumping right into something, I wouldn't go while you're going to college, I would also find charity organizations or nonprofit organizations to work with that are geared towards your interests. So if like you're into becoming a vet tech, go volunteer at a shelter, work with those, and see if what you're going for and what you're striving for is something you want in the future. Because you can always try out with volunteer work to see if it's something you like and would be something you want to farther yourself with, instead of just blindly going in and being like, okay, I'm able to get this job, I'm just going to go and get it, stick with it, and then not like it 5 years down the road.
That is some awesome advice. I feel like there might have been a slight implication at some point that you don't have all of those same resources if you don't go to college. And while, yes, that's true, it doesn't mean that there aren't alternative and equally valid resources out there as well. Volunteer work is an absolutely fantastic option, especially if you can find something, like Gizmo said, in the areas that you're interested in pursuing professionally. You always have local libraries, any sort of state services. They can offer you a lot of help and guidance. So,
Well, Nova, let me recommend one organisation that you can volunteer for that will teach you skills. That you don't have to be local to. You can sign up for this anywhere where you are in the world. Join a number of teams under a professional and learn valuable skills.
why golly,
talking
tell me
about,
more.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Red Cross.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, my disconnect ban.
Right, I ship at Furry Valley, you could learn all those skills here.
Thank you, Gizmo. Someone had
yeah,
to finish that
Gizmo is
correctly.
promoted, level 5, there we go.
Gizmo just took over the speaking, recruitment, and MC teams. Good luck.
Hey, I've took over for you before.
Ooh, shots fired.
Oof.
Well, you're welcome to them, and then I can retire in peace and
Hey, you're not retiring till I've retired.
Lower my blood pressure substantially.
For all of those hearing these things and feeling horrified, I assure you being an admin is a lot more fun than they may make it out to be.
Yeah, one part of being an
Sometimes
adult
they forget their restraints and I need to whip them a little bit more, but that's okay. They quickly get back in line.
I feel like one part of being an adult is being and moaning about all your responsibilities, despite actually quite liking your responsibilities.
Yeah. Like carrying Paco on League of Legends, that's a responsibility I have, which I whine about all the time, but really it's quite fun to see him fail at new mid.
Goodness gracious, it really is Shane Paco night tonight.
Well, right,
and yet no one's brought up his microphone yet.
Because we're all used to it by now.
Yeah.
I know, isn't that sad? We're going to get comments when we post this on YouTube. Why is this fourth person behind a waterfall? Lord. Alrighty, moving on. So we've talked a lot about, I feel like the target age here has been between 15, 21, but we have plenty of fully functioning, well-adjusted adults here in FV as well, even if they don't make much noise. Gizmo, what do you think more adults need to keep in mind or work on that often gets overlooked once you've been an adult for a while?
It seems to me that a lot of adults get complacent in what they do and they don't expand on anything else, because no matter what, you can still always learn. Like 13 years I've been a truck driver, but I've also gone into special effect makeup artist, so I know how to do Hollywood style makeup effects that are seen in videos. I know how to professionally breathe fire that you see circus performers do. I'm always constantly learning something new, even though I'm 34 years old. I'm never going to stop learning until I'm basically in a grave.
That is a great lesson, and I think that's something everyone needs to take to heart. I think lots of folk think that you reach a point where you just kind of stop learning, you stop changing, and I think that's absolute nonsense. Continue, continue pursuing new talents, new passions, and you've said it yourself, Gizmo. You're not quite an adult. You're just a giant kid who still enjoys having fun. So, have that sense of childlike wonder. You want to learn how to breathe fire? Go learn how to breathe fire. Nothing's stopping you.
I think any day where you don't learn at least one thing is a day wasted. There's, think how many books have been published. There's so many things you can choose, and you could learn any language you want, learn any skill you want. So these people who sit there and they're like, I'm bored. I'm sorry, but you need to just look. Then you've got the whole world, especially as we're talking to a more established adult. You've got the capacity to, okay, you might not have the money to do everything, but there's a lot of things you can do very cheaply. Massive variety of stuff. I want to get into parkour. I didn't say that on record.
And there's for those of you who want to read more but feel like you don't have the resources financial, libraries are good. If not, there's also a huge market in already bought books on Amazon where people will send you them for like a penny, because it's just sort of like a network of people who are interested in essentially sharing books and just paying for the posting and packaging.
And things like Wikipedia, resources which just did not exist years ago. And the amount of highly, highly technical articles on Wikipedia, which you would have had to pay very good money in a bookstore, especially this bookstore, to get this information from before, is now free.
Yeah, how do you think I wrote my dissertation?
I wrote it for you.
Oh, obviously.
Alrighty. Before we move on, Paco, is there any advice that you think the adults need to hear?
I think the perpetual learning is very important. I think as well, never settling for sort of a lot in life. I feel like some people they learn to expect things which they shouldn't, to accept things that they shouldn't accept, and they become the status quo. Realistically, it's important that if you think something is wrong, that you stand up, challenge it, and move to have it changed. Don't live with something which makes you uncomfortable just because it's a constant pain. I had a friend who essentially they tripped over one day and they thought, oh, I've got this slight pain in my the back of my leg. 2 years later, they had to have surgery on their ligaments because they'd been saying, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I've just got used to it. So generally, I think adults need to be careful about learning to accept the status quo as acceptable when it really shouldn't be.
I think extending from that, just because you're an adult, you're still changing. And so what may be correct for you when you're 25 may well not be correct for you when you're 30, and you need to be conscious of that. You're not static, and you're still growing no matter how old you are. So don't be afraid to make changes.
Yeah, I think that was some great advice. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all sharing your insight. I think it's time to go ahead and move on to our audience questions. We only have so much time left. It's not too late to ask questions if you have any. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, you can leave them in the podcast text channel right above this voice chat, and you can ask them at any point before the show ends. I like this question a lot. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about what it means to be a responsible adult? Gizmo, why don't you go ahead and start there?
Some of the biggest misconceptions about being an adult, always having to be 100% responsible. I mean, don't be afraid to choose one bill over another. It's not going to make or break you as an adult. One decision over another decision. It's always going to be an experimentation. You just got to remember that if you do choose one bill over another, that you go back and take care of that bill when you're able to, and just always try to make the best of any situation possible, because there is no right or wrong way to adult in life. It's how you perceive it at the time and what might seem best to you.
Absolutely. Everyone's on their own path. There is no right or wrong answer. Well, there are definitely wrong answers, but Just because you aren't doing the same thing everyone else is doing doesn't mean you're any less wrong or any less right. How about you, Paco? What would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about what adulthood is?
Well, I'd like to pick up on that final point there. The idea that there is a singular way of doing things, when in fact it's people who are going against the trends and actually stepping out on their own, who actually are the most responsible. People who haven't just taken what being an adult means as doing what everyone else is, but forging their own path and taking on responsibilities and being proactive, rather than just gliding into a path that is well established for them. I can really respect that. And I think that really dispels the idea of being an adult in the singular. What advice would I have for people generally, though? It's don't be afraid to take responsibility, and don't be afraid to drop responsibilities if they're too much. You shouldn't be afraid of disappointing people, and to try things, you should sincerely try them, give them your best effort, and if you are incapable or they're too much, drop them and move on. And through that, you will continue to learn, you will continue to grow, and you will not become static.
I think a lot of teenagers think adults are boring, and when you become an adult, you stop having fun. Now, I sing on public transport. I chase the pigeons around in my city. One of my colleagues, he went to the Amazon rainforest and did ayahuasca with one of the native tribes there. So you certainly don't need to be boring when you become an adult.
In many ways, being an adult gives you the resources to, indulge in whatever fun you have. Yeah.
And one misconception I'm surprised we didn't really talk about all that much is that adults have any clue what they're doing at any given moment. There is not just going to be some moment where you're like, oh, yes, I'm an adult. I understand taxes and I know how to correctly schedule an appointment. It's all stuff you learn through.
One key point at which you sort of become an adult is when you realize your parents aren't right about everything. Like, legitimately, you notice problems. You're sure your parents have done things wrong, whereas as a child, you sort of look up to them and, well, of course it's right. Mum and Dad said it was right. You question that as a teenager, but I think it's only when you get sort of your mid-20s you're like, yeah, no, that was wrong.
We kind of covered that, unless either of y'all have any more big misconceptions about adulthood. We could talk about this for an entire show, I'm sure. But do you think that there's anything else that people younger folk just don't really get about adulthood?
I'd say that there are certain things about being an adult, quote unquote, which get thrust upon you, responsibilities such as actually having to potentially own or rent a home, take care of your own finances, find a job, that whilst you are technically taught about in schools through abstract modes of thinking, you aren't concretely prepared for. We don't really do classes in financial management here in the UK. It might be different in other countries. We don't really do anything on how to properly do appointments, what you should be doing on a yearly, weekly, whatever basis. And I think one thing that a lot of young people could benefit from doing a lot more is actually sort of looking into those skills themselves. The actual concrete things of how to manage finances, how to book an appointment, how to, do a weekly shop, for example, pack and how to pack a bag. It sounds amazingly simple, but I mean, to quote Charlie Munger, the guy who set up Berkshire Hathaway with Robert Buffett, it's about the unrecognized simplicities of effective action. Effective stuff can be remarkably simple. And teaching yourself those skills early rather than showing up for your weekly shop for the first time ever and thinking, oh, shit, it will help you.
Simple cooking and cleaning, being able to make yourself some scrambled eggs, some toast, just simple things to make sure you're not going to starve. I mean, this isn't taught in school in the UK. Like how to clean a cooker, how to clean a toilet. It's basic shit that's really boring, but you need to know how to do it.
I've seen and I saw it being posted derogatively, whichever one. Struggling with words today. Whichever on social media, that's shown a rise in quote-unquote adulting classes. for teaching those basic things, and people were honestly shaming the folk who would be involved in this. You know, you should have already known how to do this, where your parents XYZ. But it was something I wanted to ask Paco actually. How do you figure out what it is you don't know? I feel like that's one of the...
I feel as if those who go to university get a very useful stepping point in their lives where, in fact, they are able to figure out some of these simpler things. They are away from home. They are having to feed themselves, but, if they're not eating anything, people are going to probably come and check on them. So that does, for those who don't get the expensive luxury of that transition, figuring out what you don't know is really kind of a throwing in at the deep end thing. If you are living on your own, it will quickly become apparent that you need to cook, and then it will become apparent that you need food to do that cooking. It will become apparent, oh shit, I've run out of plates, I need to wash the dishes. It will become clear, oh wait, my sink isn't working, what's happened, do I need to fix it myself? The thing about this is, I think, where this sort of idea of an adult comes from, as having these responsibilities, because through actually having to fend for yourself, naturally you gain experience in these areas. However, absolutely, it will help you a lot if and save you a lot of stress if you know how to do at least some of these things before you encounter them. Obviously, sometimes you're going to get blindsided, but actually having a basic idea of these skills. Another good one is how to do your laundry. That's going to help you a lot. That's going to help you a lot when you're on your own.
Anything to add to that, Gyzmo?
No, I'm just watching the speaking voice. As Sebian brought up a good point, is a lot of schools don't do what they used to do with mock applications, the fantasy checkbooks, teaching kids the basics while they're growing up before they even get out of high school. Because I remember growing up knowing how to do all that and knowing how to basically do the basic survival skills to make it through life as I grew.
I really think that that's something that we need to be bringing back to the public school system. I really think that I feel like the base of it is that they almost expect kids to just understand how to be an adult by the time they reach that age. That almost as if kids are going to pick up all of these skills by osmosis as time goes on.
There's a lot of problems more generally in the school system, though. I mean, when was the last time you used Pythagoras in real life? But they teach it to every 14-year-old. If we taught kids skills they actually need, they'd be much better for the workforce, and they'd be much better off for themselves. I mean, we have up to age 16 in the UK, I kid you not, they teach kids in IT class, computing class, what a floppy disk is, the various parts of a printer, how a scanner works, all this sort of crap, and it's so deprecated. The courses are so out of date that you just think, okay, teach the kids basic coding, show them how to use a spreadsheet to keep track of their finances. It's simple things that are no more complicated than, okay, memorize these parts of a cell or crap that no one needs. We actually reformulate the courses, sciences, maths, IT, and make them more relevant. People will do better as they get older. And I think it's not just the science, it's also, you look at classes like English. I mean, okay, analyze Shakespeare and write about it, cool, but why not just teach me how to write an email? Teach me how to communicate with an employer. English should be about communication skills, and all the classes suffer with this. It's and the government's too slow. The government doesn't keep up with the pace of technology. Too much bureaucracy.
Sorry, go on, Nova.
I was just going to say, it sounds like even after we've already had the debate on this, that we probably need to have a podcast about the education system too, because we all have some strong feelings about it seems.
Oh, it's terrible.
Tell us how you really feel, though.
It's really terrible.
Okay, maybe not.
Yeah, it's really terrible.
Save that for another podcast.
Yeah, I have to teach and inspire kids in a system where I don't believe in it. That's hard.
Alrighty, I'm going to try to get through a couple more questions. A lot of these were answered during the show, and y'all, there is still time to ask questions. If you want to leave them in the podcast text channel, we should have time for a couple more, so go ahead and throw them in there if you have anything you want to ask. So right before we ended up on that tangent, Foxfiend asked a question that there's a bit of an implication there. I said how I really don't think there's a point where you notice that you're actually an adult. So, and since an adult doesn't mean any one unanimous thing amongst all people, is the idea of being an adult a myth? Paco, would you like to jump on that?
Sure. So, as I've said, I think that the boundaries are in some ways artificial, although the existence of those boundaries in a way makes it real. So, for example, the fact that certain things are set to 18 in the UK, like the ability to vote, to join you can join the military at 16. But even if these boundaries are artificial, they're given power by their existence, i.e., since so much is bestowed to you at 18 and that responsibility is given, well, in a way, that does formally make you an adult. But as we've said, these artificial and legal boundaries don't correlate with the science, which shows sort of much later development. And even then, I think that age is a poor determinant, because clearly, we all know people who are much older but really are lacking in the ability to be responsible. So yeah, I think in many ways it is a myth. I think it really, really is. I think it's important we make the distinctions for the protection of children, because I think that children absolutely are a very clear category. But sort of the more nebulous term of adult is kind of a myth, yeah.
Do you agree, Gizmo? I know you might be a little biased since you said you really don't think you're an adult, but would you say that the whole idea of an adult in the way that we understand it now is a myth?
It to me, it would be more of a myth, but I look at it as survival versus being an adult. Am I able to survive on my own, make it through life, and take care of myself? Yes. By society standards, that would be quote unquote adult. But I'm also a big kid. I like gaming, going out, doing stuff, having fun, hanging out, and doing the social interactive stuff that the younger crowds still consider being a child or a young adult and stuff like that. So I just see it as survival versus being a myth, because no matter what, as long as you're surviving, you're being a basic adult, because that's what life is. It's just surviving through it.
Well, if you don't survive it, then you're dead.
Then it's game over.
I think it's a societal construct, much like we discussed about grey muzzle as well. What does it even mean? It's just an indicator. Society likes to create a term to describe a category of people because it's useful to do so. I don't think it's anything more than that.
I think we have...
just briefly with Foxfiend saying you're 24, you're still tripping over your paws and stuff. That's normal. I thought I knew roughly what I was doing when I was in my mid-20s, and I look back now and I'm like, nah, I didn't have any clue. And I'm sure 5 years from now I'll look back again and I was like, what was I doing in my late 20s?
And that's how you know you're always growing, when you can look back at yourself 5 years ago and say, who the hell was that little...
Even 1 year ago. You change a lot every year. Even as you go towards your 30s, you're still changing a remarkable amount in each year. It's almost unrecognizable sometimes.
Alrighty, I think we have one more question. So, and I'm trying to parse this correctly. This one's from Solid Crazy. He asks, is being a real adult a state of mind or someone with the knowledge/wisdom to be an adult? And I guess kind of the root of that question is adulthood, or is being an adult something you become, or does it take an active effort and you knowing a sufficient amount for you to be considered an adult? Gizmo, how do you feel about that? Do you think that adulthood is something you become, or is it something that you kind of earn?
I would say it's something you become through the knowledge you gain, the experience that you go through as you're growing up. I mean, it's not going to be like, boom, you turn 25, here's your adulthood award. It's nothing as easy as that. It's what you've gone through, the hardships you face, and everything that makes you the person that you are to get to the level of being an adult.
I think that's a pretty nuanced view. What do you think, Paco?
I really concur with what Gizmo just said. For once, I don't really have anything else to add.
Everyone needs to make a note of this. This might have been the only time it's ever happened. Alrighty. So we have hit that 1 hour mark. I think it's about time to wrap up. So that's our podcast tonight. Gizmo, Paco, I appreciate y'all taking the time to come out. I know you're both very busy. You had a lot to say. We all have a lot to think about now, and I had a lot of fun, so thank you. Simba, I want to thank you for co-hosting with me. It was a pleasure having you here.
Yep, thanks for always, Nova.
You know it. So our next podcast is going to be same time, same place, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Our topic next week is Will Draw for Food, Exploring Furry Artists. If you want to speak on this subject next week and did not already react to the announcement poll, please send me, I'm Nova, a message. And there are still openings for this one, so please, if there are any artists out there who are really excited to talk about their art, then this is the perfect time for you to do so. And with that, that's our show. Once again, I want to thank everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I did, as always. This is always the highlight of my week. I got to remind you all that. I can't wait to see you next week. If you want to stick around and chat, we'll be moving down to the Hangout voice chats for discussion and just kind of shit posting. Otherwise, we'll see you again Monday.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.